Greetings, YouTube. A myth you see a lot in science fiction is that of the great invention, whether it's steampunk or contemporary or far future. The idea being that someone, most often a white dude, invents something that no one has ever even conceived of. That this thing has just come out full blown from his mind, like Athena from the forehead of Zeus. It doesn't quite work that way. You see, if something gets invented, it's because the information that led to that invention exists. And that information doesn't exist in a vacuum. I can't think of any instance where a researcher did everything on their own. It just isn't what happens. The information is available, and researchers talk to each other. And while they may not hammer out all their details, because there is some keeping their cards to the chest, broad swaths of research and general knowledge are shared freely. And what happens is that it's sort of in the researcher's zeitgeist. So you will often see pieces of technology popping up at approximately the same time in multiple places. Because, again, the information is present. So when you're seeing something in a film or a book or a television series or what have you, that's supposed to have been, we have to make sure this information isn't kept from the public. There are engines out there that run on water, but the oil companies are keeping that secret. Yeah, no. If we could run engines on water, we'd be running engines on water. Okay? That would not be a secret. But we can't because water doesn't work that way. Unless, of course, you're using electrolysis to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. And then, yes, you can run engines on water. But just liquid water, not so much. One of the best examples I can think of this, in fact, it popped into my head when I was thinking of the idea for this video, is the film The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the movie, the reboot, with Henry Cavill, he looked really great in that suit, far better than a Superman suit. It was an amusing little film. It had its flaws, but it looked great, and I quite enjoyed it. It's just that it lacked some punch, and it didn't quite get as far as it could have. But one of the basic concept is that this researcher has come up with this new way of making nuclear devices that is cheaper and more powerful. And they have to keep this from falling into the hands of terrorists and into the, unscrupulous nations and things like that. Otherwise, the world as we know it will end. Now, nuclear weapons as they exist now are scary enough as it is. And there are far too many countries that have them, and that number being any. We don't need any nuclear weapons in the world. But the idea that there would be some secret which would allow nuclear weapons that were cheaper and more powerful to exist kind of goes against, the laws of physics as we know them. So if that were true, then that information would have been everywhere. So it wouldn't have just been one researcher that was able to come up with it. No. And making that information disappear wouldn't have solved anything. You may possibly have delayed the process slightly, but it was still going to happen. And there was nothing you could do to stop it. Now, you could maybe be the group that comes up with them first and says, if anybody else develops them, we'll nuke you. But, mutually assured destruction is what follows right after that, because the other governments will invent them in secret and then not say anything until they have working models. So that's how that works. So that doesn't work that way. So destroying the prototype or killing the researcher or what have you isn't going to save anything. It's just a lame plot point that flies in the face of actual research and the way technology advances. And it always bugs the crap out of me. And I think that we should, again, be expecting more. we should not be tolerating lazy writing, but we apparently do. And we accept this bull. You see it in Star Trek all the friggin' time. Not only do they invent things that, are convenient in the minute, they then forget they ever existed, and they never mention them again. Which, of course, in reality, if you were actually able to pull that off, it would become the foundation for an entire branch of physics, and they would then find every single conceivable way to apply it to the world as possible. It's what engineers do. You just don't hand them a stick and say, okay, you got a stick now. Happy? No. They find out everything they can do with that stick. They shove that stick into every conceivable place. Metaphor intended. And you can't stop them. They will always find new horizons and new ways to use the technology that is at hand. And as they each add that knowledge to the base, it gets more complex. And it grows over time. We have seen so far because we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's how technology advances. And it isn't all about the mythical great invention that can be squashed, or we have to share it with the world, or the powers that be will win kind of thing. That's not how that works. And I think it's lazy, and I'm always disappointed when I see any storyline use it, let alone one that's got some other things going for it. So, have you ever encountered this kind of thing? Has it bothered you? Can you think of some good examples? I mean, I thought of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but there are, hundreds out there. So I'm sure we can come up with something. For example, time travel in Back to the Future. That would be a good example right there. So let's talk about the myth of the great invention.